Good morning. Hi. So I decided you gave me kind of the idea. I'm going to do a book video today, and I'm just going to go through, I think I have like 20 books here, and I'm going to go through them, and I'm going to tell you the title, the author, and give you kind of a review. Just tell you what I thought about them, kind of what they were about, what I thought. And then I'll have in the description box below a list of all the books and whether I like them or not. So here we go. We'll start. The Boy in Striped Pajamas by Jone. I liked it. It's one of those books that you love it or you don't. I liked it. I think that it's beautiful. I mean, it's very moving. It's about this boy whose dad was a commandant of a prison camp during World War II. And this little boy befriends a Jewish boy in the concentration camp, and they're friends through the fence. And the son ends up going under the fence, going with the boy, and they die. It's really, really sad. They die. But, I mean, the thoughts that these boys has, like, it's very innocent and sweet, and it's just beautifully written. So, The Boy in Striped Pajamas. I loved it. Loved it. In my opinion, the lady that wrote this book I'm about to show you is the most brilliant author that has ever lived. The book is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. TJ, if you have not read this, go get it. It is the most beautiful book you will ever read, with one exception. My favorite book. This is my second favorite book. Go get it. It's so beautiful. It's a love story set in the 1800s between these two families, this wealthy guy and this poor girl. And she cannot stand him, and he ends up falling in love with her, and it's just a twisted series of events, and it's, it isn't simply written. It's kind of hard to read, but you use your brain, and it's just, I cannot stress this book enough. Pride and Prejudice. Also, if you haven't heard of it, there's a movie. So right now, get on YouTube, search the movie Pride and Prejudice with Matthew Macfadyen and Keira Knightley. Just watch the trailer or something. It's a beautiful, beautiful book, and like I said, if you haven't heard of it, watch the trailer. Next book. It's called Warriors Don't Cry by Melba Pattillo Beals. She was a black that was persecuted in the 1960s because a long time ago, black people were hated in America. We hated black people. And so in the 1960s, they started to try to get more rights and become, try to get more place in the American culture. So this book talks about how this teenage girl, went to high school with white people for the very first time. And it's very moving. She talks about, she got beat up and people spit on her and threw paint at her. And she had to be walked home. Military guards, people were trying to kill her. The Ku Klux Klan, all these things, just really, really good. In the beginning, though, there's one scene where this man, it isn't descriptive, it isn't too inappropriate, but it's a little bit inappropriate. This man comes after her and tries to be inappropriate or whatever, but nothing happens. She runs away. He doesn't get her. But just disclaimer, beautiful book except for that one scene. That's the only scene I remember. There might be more, but I think that's the only one. Good book. You should read it. Next, this man comes after Jane Austen in brilliance. His name is C.S. Lewis. He was the most brilliant male author that has ever lived. He wrote The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I'm sure that you've heard of them. There's no way you couldn't have. I'm sure you've seen the movies. You should read the books too. The books are so beautifully written, very descriptive, very, very good, nothing inappropriate, really, really good. Chronicles of Narnia. You should read it. Next, Charles Dickens and Great Expectations. It's about a boy who's an orphan, and it's kind of weird and kind of depressing, but it's a classic, everybody should read it because Charles Dickens wrote it. It's a classic, but it's still kind of inappropriate. Not inappropriate, what am I saying? It's kind of depressing, and it's weird, this old lady is, shut up in her house, and he goes and he takes care of her, and she's just weird, but there's nothing inappropriate. I read it when I was, 11 years old. Not inappropriate. Next book, Bridget Jones's Diary by Helen Fielding. Do not even open the cover of this book. It's trash. It's disgusting. Sometimes what I do is I go to the bookstore And, like, this was a movie. And I liked the movie. I didn't see the whole thing, so I wasn't sure how inappropriate it was. But I was like, hey, I should get the book. I bet the book's really good. So I get the book, and I'm, like, halfway through it, and I just shut it, and I'm done reading it. Because it's so inappropriate. Just disgusting. So, disclaimer, do not get this book. Great big X, don't get this book. Next book. The Jesus Generation by Billy Graham. If you don't know who, well, you probably don't know who Billy Graham is, but I'm just going to tell you. He was a pastor, a minister in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, and he was in America, and he would go to these stadiums, like concert stadiums, and he would talk to thousands of people about Jesus, and he brought multitudes of people to Christ. I mean, he was probably this is what he looks like. He was probably one of the most incredible men that's ever lived. He would, I mean, and they were called revivals, and they would have tent revivals, and they would have music, and then he would talk, and he wasn't all, like, preachy and, like, like, go to Jesus or anything like that. He was real Southern, He had a real nice accent, and he was just really down to earth, and he was one of the people, and he didn't pretend to be some great prophet, He confessed to being a sinner and everything, and anyways, really, really, really good man. And this book is about teenagers and Jesus, and how teenagers should respond to Jesus. It was written in the 1970s, so some of it's kind of irrelevant, but he has some really, really beautiful thoughts in here. So if you ever have the chance to get your hands on this, do it. It's a really good book. But it isn't for pleasure reading. It's more spiritual growth reading. So that's that. The next book is called Mara, Daughter of the Nile by Eloise Jarvis McGraw. I love this book. It's kind of a thriller romance. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing inappropriate. It's set in Egypt in biblical times. I've read it 3 or 4 times. This girl pretends to be a spy, but she's a spy for the good guy and the bad guys, and so she's, like, living a double life, and then she falls in love with somebody. So it's really, really good. Next book. Disclaimer again. Horrible book. This book is called Beautiful People by Eloise Jarvis McGraw. I got this book because I thought it was going to be something other than it was. It's garbage, trash, and it needs to be burned. That's all I'm going to say about it. Burn this. It's a horrible book. Don't ever read it. Next pile. It's called 22 Britania Road by Amanda Hodgkinson. The story is really beautiful. There are like 25 million inappropriate scenes, though. Burn it. Don't read it. I mean, the beautiful storyline is not even worth all the inappropriate stuff that's in there. Don't read that book. Next book. You really should read this. It's called How to Be a Hepburn in a Hilton World by Jordan Christie. I don't know if you know who these people are. Audrey Hepburn was an actress back in the black and white movies days. And then Paris Hilton is this modern, rich model girl. Horrible, trashy woman. Audrey Hepburn was a classy, cute, like she wore outfits like what's on the cover. Like she was really cute and classy. So this book talks about how to be a classy girl in the midst of such a miserable, messed up, inappropriate world. It's a really good book, nothing inappropriate. And it, like, let me just read you like one of the chapter names. Keep your chin up and your skirt down. Choose your friends wisely. Dress to impress. Less is more. Stuff like that. I mean, it really is just beautifully written. I say that about all these books, but they are. It's very well written. She's very personal. Like, she tells you about herself. And she gives you some really great ideas. This was meant for older women, or for like 20-year-old ladies, but some of it's relevant to us teenagers too. So I encourage you to get that book. How to Be a Hepburn in a Hilton World. Next book. This is called The Aviator's Wife by Melanie Benjamin. I started this book the other night. The storyline, again, is really good. It's about this really 1920s, this man that flew an airplane across the ocean for the first time falls in love with this girl, and she thinks he's amazing, and then they get married, and he turns out to be really serious and strict and rule-oriented, and she doesn't like him. I've read this much of it. That's what happens in the first quarter. There has been one inappropriate scene so far, so I'm probably going to burn this book too. So don't read that book. Next book. It's called Sophie's World by Jostine Gardner. This is a philosophical book. It talks about this teenage girl who gets to go and meet all kinds of philosophers. It's kind of hard to read. I mean, it really is. You have to really think about it. I didn't ever finish it, but absolutely nothing inappropriate. Very philosophical, hard to read. Good book, but not my favorite. I prefer fiction, fun to read books. All right. I only have 4 more books, so bear with me. I know that this is a long video, but I'm almost done. Left Behind by Tim LaHaye and Jerry B. Jenkins. You have to read this book. It's actually a series of 10. I have the series way up there. Up there, right there. 1 of 10. This book talks about the rapture when Jesus comes back. Written in a Christian perspective by these 2 men. And it talks about several characters that were left behind when the rapture came that weren't Christians and who become Christians. Some of them don't, but who become Christians. And it talks about the things that happen in the rapture. It's a serious wake-up call. Very spiritual, but still a fun-to-read book. It isn't obnoxiously spiritual, It isn't ridiculous. But really an eye-opener. I recommend that you read this book as soon as possible. It's called Left Behind. Should read it. It's very, very good. Written, again, in a Christian worldview. Talks about Jesus. They don't bring up anything that's against the Bible. It's all very true to the Bible. Next book. It's called The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. If you ever just really need a heartthrob book, and I don't mean like love, but I mean something that really just pulls on your heartstrings, this is the book to read. It's about this girl and her sister who or her family, I guess, who lived in Europe during World War II and were taken to prison camps. It's a true story written by the woman, and everything that happens, I won't spoil it for you, but I mean, I think of all the books I've recommended, this one is you feel everything with her. I cried when I read this book, which is weird because I don't ever get into books enough to cry, but I cried when I read this book. It was very, very good. So, Hiding Place, definitely a should read. Last one, Dear John. No, I have one more, just kidding. Dear John by Nicholas Sparks. This is a love story. I don't know if you, it actually got turned into a movie with Channing Tatum and Amanda Seyfried. 2 people I don't like. I haven't seen the movie. The book was good. I thought it was really corny, actually, and I hated the ending. But if you like love stories, anything by Nicholas Sparks is a love story, good love story. So, Dear John by Nicholas Sparks. A maybe. You should read the reviews. It was a maybe. There were 3 inappropriate scenes. Nothing very descriptive. They didn't actually talk about everything, but it was very suggestive. 3 very suggestive scenes. Last book. Don't judge the cover. Before we go any further, don't judge this book by its cover. It's called The Outsiders by S.C. Hinton. I told you about this book the other night. I've read this book 4 times within a month. My favorite book all time ever. I could do another video. I probably will, actually. That's probably what I'm going to do now. An entire video based on this book. Most beautiful thing I've ever read in my life. And it's so relatable. It's about this gang of boys in the 1960s that gets, they're like brothers, and they take care of each other and just everything that happens to them. Really beautiful. I think I'm going to make a video about this book because I loved it so much. If you have not ever heard of it, please YouTube it because there's a movie. Watch the trailer. Tell me what you think. I love this book so much. My favorite book. I saved it for last. Alright, this video is 15 minutes long. Absolutely ridiculous, but I went through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 books. In less than 17 minutes. Cool. Alright. Good morning. I think you just woke up. I will get this video to you as soon as I can. Skype me when you get a chance, and I hope that you enjoyed my book review.